Dave Collum gave an interview. And Dave Collum is someone to be taken serious. He's the guy that writes the year in review for a couple of years now. And that's one of the more important notes on each passing year, because the way things are right now, everything is screwed up and everything is upside down, and so many unbelievable things are happening. And if no one takes notes, we will totally forget what's going on. So Dave Cullum is the hero of this episode. But Dave Cullum is much more. He's a professor at Cornell. He is established, presumably independent, wealthy at this point in time, has a huge following, has a clear vision, has doesn't hesitate to say things as they are, and points out for a couple of times now that markets are really lopsided, that things are really not okay, and you don't get um, value for the money you put in at this point in time. Things have to correct. That is his notion, really, and that's not new. And he's not claiming that we have to have a correction now. It's more like this cannot go on forever in this way. This will stop. So the remarkable thing about the interview he gave now is that he said this year's year in review will be much shorter than the years prior, because there are many topics he cannot and doesn't want to talk about, and he doesn't want to talk too much about Trump, which is a shame because talking about Trump is so interesting. But at the same time, he said, well, he can make a case for everything between Trump being a genius, playing 5D chess and whatnot, and Trump being dumb and just stumbling along. And I concur that this has always been the issue, that there's a wide range of interpretations of what it is we are looking at in this world, in this theater we are being presented. And then Dave Collum said something matter of factly that we need to pause and contemplate. Dave Collum told us that he has on good sources that the CIA is running drugs and humans, like children and women, for profit, and that this profit center really is the majority of the CIA's profit, what the budget they use for all kinds of things. He's not the first to point this out, but he's not to be brushed away. Dave Collum telling us that the CIA is deeply intertwined in the drug traffic in the US and worldwide for that matter, and running human trafficking along the same lines. We have to pause and say, well, wait a minute. You are telling us on good sources, on with a straight face, matter of factly, that the CIA is the head of the criminal organizations of the drug trafficking worldwide. What are the implications here? The implications are devastating, and that's what we need to wrap our head around first, so that we can understand Trump and everything that happens right now. So the matter of factly, the presentation, the claim that the CIA is running drugs and running huge drug business, which means that the war on drugs that is run by the US government is nothing but the attempt to protect the monopoly of the CIA. It's nothing but pushing the small guys out of business so that the big guy has the market for itself. for himself. Um, so looking at this picture, we have to understand that this is not happened since last Tuesday. This is a long-standing situation. It didn't develop during Trump's presidency, and in fact, we have to go way back, and we don't need to go so much back in our history. Um, if we go to the 80s and 90s, we have Bush Senior as U.S. president, and before being president, being the vice president with Reagan. And Bush Senior used to be chief of the CIA, and just assuming that the CIA isn't in the drug business since last week, but for quite a while, we get to get the picture that the political class, since Bush Senior, at least, is deeply involved in nefarious dealings. And lo and behold, there have been a lot of scandals and a lot of problems and a lot of isolated news items flaring up every now and then. That's something, not everything is fine, but we always assumed from a Western point of view as a citizens of Western nations that for the most part we are good. They are just black sheep everywhere. And now we learn, no, for the most part, the government organizations ran cover for criminal organizations and were intertwined with criminal organizations, were in fact criminal. And that is something we need to slowly comprehend. This can only be true if the corruption that goes along with it has been throughout. You cannot have a CIA running drugs and a free press trying to investigate such things. You have to have your free press being bought and sold for. You have to have your free press being captured by the same actors. So there was cover. There's no other way. But if there was cover, we get to look at the Western democracies, the Western nations, as organizations that lied to their citizens consciously and hid the real dirty dealings from their citizens all the time, all the while, every now and then, lecturing China on human rights or whatnot, which is ridiculous given that the CIA was running drugs in humans worldwide. And the war in Afghanistan was really a war to secure the supply for the CIA and the drug business. If all these things are true, we are faced with a world that's deeply criminal and deeply deceptive and being set up so that normal citizens don't notice. Which means in turn that the media has been lying to us all this time. Of course, news anchors didn't really know, well, not necessarily know about the real background dealings. And I'm not trying to say that everyone on the other side was in on all the secrets. But we know from Tucker Carlson that news anchors were paid enormous amounts of money and still had the desire to kill themselves every now and then. And he reports on these kinds of problems. So news anchors really were paid to lie to the general public with a straight face and torment their souls in the process, keep the lies up, keep keep the story, the narrative together. And that seems to have been the starting point for whatever Trump is, whatever the new situation is, whatever the cleanup is that is going on now. And I deeply, wholeheartedly believe we have a deep cleanup being pursued at this point in time. And that's the second piece of Dave Collum's interview, where he said, well, he doesn't know, and he can make a case for all kinds of Trumps, and it is a struggle, I admit, because there's no hard evidence for Trump is great and beyond the pale awesome. There's circumstantial evidence, and I deeply believe this being the case. I don't believe him to be like a fifth level genius all by himself. I believe him to be an enormous genius and coming with a team of brilliant men that support him. Most of those you don't see. But why do I believe that? Why is that the kind of the only explanation still standing? So the simple reason is that for him to be randomly lucky doesn't count anymore, doesn't work anymore. He's not standing for so long, still being up front, still like have a win the presidency as a developer from Queens, and then being ousted in a brutal way 4 years later, and then come back 4 years later as a madman who wants to like take revenge and still not understanding what's going. No, this explanation just doesn't fly. It doesn't work. That's not how the real world operates. The real world is done by adults. It's not a social media enterprise. Social media is nonsense for the most part. Real governing and real dealings, business or otherwise, are done by adult people that understand what's going on. So the only explanation left is Trump is actually smart and actually knows what's going on. Now that explanation isn't something that I came up with myself. That's an explanation that has been given to us, the general public, over these years, in small doses, and always, and that's the maddening part of it, always in a way that it's not citable. It's always hearsay. It's always comes with a package of that's what the dumb people would believe. It always comes in the package of don't look for the grammar, look for the content, really. You cannot cite real raw news in polite circles in an adult conversation. It's laughable, the way they speak and do their articles. And I'm not basing my belief on real raw news. That's just an example of the kind of information we are getting, and what word on the street is. Like the interpretation of the real raw news side is that they are oftentimes correct directionally, but never on timing and never in detail. So it's a lot of grain of salts there. Still, it's one of those places where someone gives us some hints of what's really going on. And that's the real interesting question for me. What's really going on? And we're in a world where there are a lot of talking heads, and a couple of them, Dave Collum included, but there's Tom Luongo and there are are trying to read the footprints of what we see right now in the markets and in international relations and treaties and wars and whatnot, and try to figure out what's going on from there. And it's very helpful. That's very entertaining, and it's something we are, a lot of people are interested in, very much, myself included. But I don't think these analysts, these people that are serious and educated and looking at the real world for what's happening, I don't think these people get the full picture, because get the framework. I'm sorry, it's not the full picture. Full picture is full of data, full of how many events can you track and understand, and the framework, the mental framework of what is actually happening seems to be much more slippery, because we're being lied to. We are being lied to from all sides. And to understand why that is, it is so important to first go to the time before Trump and say, okay, back then we were being lied to. There was a systematic level of lies built into the system. And that's kind of the key realization, that the old world, the world of Obamas and Bushes and all the figureheads we had of Hollywood, like where's Steve Spielberg and all these other clowns now, like the old world we lost and we'll never go back to again, used to lie to us and we didn't know. And now there's someone who's trying to create a new world and who's waiting for participation, apparently. But then again, doing the heavy lifting behind our backs and still lying to us about all of this. Probably for a very good reason. Probably with a very important plan and thinking in mind. But it still lies. And so, looking at current actions, we are still looking at theater. We are still looking at something that has to be said and done in order to get the general public, who's not paying too close attention and doesn't get the mental framework of what's happening here, to take them along, to give an explanation why, say, Israel doesn't fight with Iran anymore, why Ukraine is done and dusted now, why things are changing at a rapid pace, and the fact that things are changing should be very obvious now. We should see in the gold and silver markets, gold and silver pricing now, that things are way out of whack, and we get the incredible movements already, and Michael Oliver tells us that we're only getting started here. Still, we are at price levels today that were unthinkable in the old system, that were absolutely not asked for by the British. And now we are there, and we don't seem to go back. So the world decidedly changes, and we are within a very dynamic phase. So we are not, it's not done at all. And still, we didn't mentally pick it up yet. We didn't have an explanation yet. And most people will probably only know what happened long after the fact. But what's the fun in that? And that's why Dave Collum, in his observations and his skill of not exact